Conservatism. Conservatism aims to preserve conventional values. Conservatives in Western culture typically support organized religion, the nuclear family, the armed forces, and property rights. Liberalism. Liberalism dominated modern history. It typically supports the ideas that each and every person has the right to privacy, that the consent of the people who make up the government is necessary, and that all persons ought to be treated equally in front of the law. Additionally, it supports free market elections involving several political parties, the division of powers among the various branches of government, the separation of church and state, the fundamental principles outlined in the Constitution, the right to privacy, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion. Moderatism. Moderatism prefers to keep inside the political spectrum that the general public finds acceptable, known as the Overton window. Moderates are typically apolitical, which is to say that they don't care but are somewhat informed about politics. Capitalism. Capitalism is the private ownership of the means of production and their use for financial gain. Private property, free trade, rivalry, labor division, and social collaboration are the main tenets of capitalism. Socialism. Socialism refers to a broad range of ideologies. It includes worker-owned means of production, strong support for worker coups, democratic self-management, and workplace democracy. In the modern era, socialism also promotes high taxes on the wealthy and the nationalization of important industries. Social ownership is one of its major principles. Syndicalism. Syndicalism, which is the offspring of socialism, holds that the most effective ways to establish a socialist society are through labor unionization, the creation of local, decentralized revolutionary worker organizations known as syndices, and the advancement of workers' demands through strikes and direct action. After the establishment of a post-capitalist society, to represent the various unions and sectors of the economy to a central government, a congress or commune of syndicates would be established. Corporatism. Corporatism promotes the division of labor among various sectors of the population according to aptitudes and interests, such as military engineering, agriculture, and so on. It is based on the idea of a cross-class regulatory structure in which the state, businesses, and labor unions bargain with one another to manage the economy as profitably as possible while, in principle, satisfying all stakeholders. It doesn't allude to a political structure where big business dominates. It would be an authoritarian system. Libertarianism. Libertarianism aims to increase individuality and political freedom while upholding liberty as a fundamental ideal. It supports very limited government and upholds liberal values including equality before the law and the fundamental rights to life, liberty, and property. Separatism. Separatism, also usually known as secessionism, is the movement to create a sovereign state or government independent of an already existing nation. Communism. Communism's core is the shared ownership of the means of production, distribution, and trade, which distribute goods according to need among all members of society. There is no private property, money, social classes, or state in a communist society. Feminism. Feminism's goal is to define and establish gender equality in terms of politics, the economy, the individual, and society. It maintains that despite efforts to reform, such as combating gender stereotypes and expanding women's access to higher education and the workforce, cultures still favor the viewpoint of men and treat women unfairly. Anarchism. Anarchism is an ideology that supports a society devoid of rulers and formal authority. Instead of the state, it argues for stateless communities and voluntary free associations. Environmentalism. Environmentalism, sometimes known as green politics, refers to a variety of ideologies that share the conviction that the environment should play a major role in shaping public policy, whether it is through promoting recycling, lowering CO2 emissions, halting water pollution, etc. Populism. Populism's main strategy is to appeal to as many people as possible while also playing on their sensibilities, with the idea that the general public must get what they want. It just needs to symbolize a popular movement, which means it can take on a lot of different shapes. For the populace, it lacks any true political affiliation as a result. Because of its dependence on public support, it is frequently linked to democracies. It is usually anti-establishment and anti-politics, and it frequently separates the populace from the elite. Republicanism. Republicanism is an ideology based on a non-hereditary form of governance that, in contrast to monarchy, grants political authority to the people living in a state that is set up as a republic. Progressivism. Progressivism is that historical legacies should not be revered and should instead be seen as secondary to society advancement. Essentially, it is the antithesis of conservatism. Imperialism. Imperialism has existed historically. He thought that a nation should use force to increase its influence or authority. Although it was essentially significant as moderatism and was once immensely popular, its appeal has waned over time. Imperialism is characterized by its support for war and its conviction that the stronger countries ought to dominate the weaker ones. Usually, in response to charges of oppression, he argues that colonized people win because wealthier nations support them and provide them with resources that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. Egalitarianism. Egalitarianism expands on the idea of social equality and prioritizes it for everyone. As a result, every state's citizens need to enjoy the same legal protections and treatment. Transhumanism. Transhumanism described that everyone should use technology to advance themselves in order to meet both the most fundamental and complicated of humankind's problems. All individuals achieving immortality and greatly enhanced bodies and minds is the ultimate goal. Communitarianism. Communitarianism is an ideology that prioritizes the community as the fundamental social unit and stresses its value and well-being. Usually, it will emphasize that politics' left-right binary is holding it back and make the case that both liberal and conservative policies are complementary and essential to the good of the community. It holds that when total individualism conflicts with the common good, it is bad. Authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is that a strong, typically central government that enforces deference to authority and restricts political and civil liberties. For instance, authoritarianism is present in the majority of traditional monarchies. Its ruler imprisons and persecutes those who disagree with them. Fascism. Fascism is an authoritarian ideology that is typified by a controlling government that rejects the idea that people can vote between different parties. It asserts that people are weakly divided but strong united under the banner of a state, nation, army, or anything similar. It opposes separation of powers since it requires a strong central authority, which is typically referred to as a dictator. Ultranationalism, the idea that a country should only consider its own interests and disregard the rights of other nations, is another aspect of fascism. Extreme nationalism and militarism, the belief that a country ought to have a strong enough military to advance its interests and ideals, usually go hand in hand. Forceful tactics are employed by fascism to stifle opposition. It encourages the rejection of personal interests in favor of what is seen to be the greater welfare of the country or race, and it maintains a natural social order. Nazism. Nazism is actually a fascism that emphasizes the racial notion that the Aryan race is superior. Being ultranationalist, it is considered to be an Aryan race according to the Nazis, believing that the Aryan race should control the rest of the world in order to improve it. If you are not regarded an Aryan, you are called unto match, which means subhuman. You also had to be white, straight, cognitively and physically capable, free of cowardice, and not Jewish. It also enjoys eugenics, a system of ideas and methods intended to enhance a population's genetic makeup. Because they were thought to be worthless eaters and to be undeserving of life, those with genetic problems were either slaughtered or sent to camps. Nazism despises gays and views them as inferior to Menschia. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like our channel for more enthusiastic content.